Ask most any Xbox-owning racing fan what the best driving game for the system is, and they'll probably tell you that RalliSport Challenge, Digital Illusion's 2002 arcade rally racer, was the best one. It was a perfect mix of arcade-style driving and just generally fun driving mechanics. Now Digital Illusions and Microsoft have released RalliSport Challenge 2 for the Xbox. It's just as good as the first one was, in fact quite a bit better in many ways. Brings more features to the table, the driving is much better, and all the presentational values that were great about the first one are even better now. RalliSport Challenge 2 is still a nice mix between realistic driving and arcade-style driving. The game is generally fast-paced. You can still kind of swerve around corners and sort of generally bounce around off the tracks in much more arcade-style fashion than you would in a more sim-based game. But overall, the general handling of the cars is quite different between each car, and each one feels pretty realistic in the general scope of things. RalliSport Challenge 2 also features some of the best crash physics you're going to find in any racing game anywhere. Some of it is a little wonky here and there. You can kind of drive up walls in certain spots, and occasionally you won't really get as damaged as you should necessarily by slamming into a wall or otherwise huge object. But overall, everything crashes and breaks really nicely. Little objects like signs and loose barriers will just kind of fly off the track when you smack into them, and really big stuff generally will cause your car to just totally deform in pretty awesome ways. The damage modeling is really great. Your bumpers can kind of sort of break off and sort of be dangling on your car here and there. You'll see your spoilers kind of fly off. Windows and windshields will just crack and break all sorts of different ways. And generally the body of your car can just get mashed up all over the place. When you're not breaking the car models, they also look really, really good. Not only is every car polished up to the point of near photorealism, but you'll see a lot of little nice touches here and there, like the awesome reflective shine off each car, sparks that'll fly off as you're like kind of running against a barrier. All in all, it just all looks really great. The game's tracks are just as good. Every set piece features incredible textures, especially the roads and trackways. They just look fantastic. The game is spread across several different countries, and every represented country looks exactly like you should. It'll see, sort of the snowy capped areas of Canada and Sweden. It'll be real rainy and dingy sort of when you're around the UK tracks, and the Australian desert looks like an Australian desert should. While everything in the game does look really great, there are a few noticeable flaws here and there, such as generally the draw distance on a lot of the background objects isn't quite as good as it could be, and you'll see a fair amount of pop in just sort of as you're kind of driving along. There's also just sort of a lack of particle effects when you're damaging your car. These are all like really minor details in the grand scheme of things, but they're, considering how awesome the game looks as a whole, it's just, they stick out a bit more. There are 5 different race types in RalliSport Challenge 2. There's a traditional rally, ice racing, hill climbs, crossover races, and rallycross races. In terms of basic gameplay modes, you can take on just a standard single race, go into a basic time trial, or you can tackle the career mode. The career mode is set up in 4 different tiers. There's beginner, amateur mode, there's a pro mode, champion mode, and the super rally mode. As you might expect, the amateur and pro modes are a little bit easier than the other two. However, they're almost a little bit too easy comparatively. You can pretty much blow through the amateur and pro modes in about 5 to 6 hours roughly, whereas the other two will probably take you considerably more time to bust through. Playing through the career mode will allow you to unlock pretty much everything there is to unlock in the game. Most of the cars and tracks start out locked, and you will have to go through the career mode in order to get all of them. Additionally, you can also unlock new skins for your cars just by driving anywhere in the game. The game keeps track of your mileage for each car, so as you hit certain mileage points, new skins are unlocked. RalliSport Challenge 2 also features pretty much the full roster of Xbox Live features you would expect from a Microsoft-published game. You can just kind of jump into a race that's already hosted by someone else, or you can set up your own race with your own design settings. You can kind of decide whether you want everyone to have manual transmission for a car. You can set up specific camera angles that every driver will have to use. And you can even set up what kind of collision detection you want. The funny thing about the collision detection, though, is that depending on which you set, whether it be full collision or ghost mode, that determines how many cars you can have in a race. If you have collision fully turned on, you can do up to 4 different cars during a race. If you do it with ghost mode, you can actually do up to 16, but you won't actually see the other cars when you're doing ghost mode. You'll just see little outlines. The game also features full XSN support, letting you start your own sort of team-based leagues as well as single-player-based. And you can also set up tournaments. All the stat tracking and all that kind of fun stuff can be tracked via the XSN website. RalliSport Challenge 2 also sounds really incredible, just as incredible as the graphics are. For the most part, that mostly comes from the in-game sound effects, which are just superb all around. You'll hear, every car pretty much has its own different engine type. You can definitely hear the distinction in sounds between them. The soundtrack is mostly instrumental licensed music. It's good background ambience, but if you don't want to listen to any of it, thankfully the game has its own custom soundtrack support, so really the soundtrack is only as good as you make it. In the end, RalliSport Challenge 2 is really just a fantastic racing game. If you're not into rally racing, then this game will probably be a little too esoteric for you because it doesn't really focus on wheel-to-wheel races and is more based on the time trial style of racing that rally racing is generally centered around. However, the game overall is just a whole lot of fun. It's a fantastic sequel to an already great game, and even as a standalone title, it's fantastic. When it comes right down to it, it's just one of the most pleasurable driving experiences you're going to find on any console, and if you like racing games, you should not pass it up.